Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now that we're a few episodes into Daima, and you've been sitting on the fence waiting for an opportunity to binge watch some episodes and to catch up even faster, you can go and check out my reviews right here, because I've done every single one. So I think it's quite safe to say that Dragonball Daima is really now starting to kick into high gear, because I'm seeing the hype about this series really starting to come into its own after a long period of people just going like, Daima's boring. Well, now who's talking, fellas? We've got two fights in the same story, as well as lore. Now you see, we can have both storytelling and action together. Maybe that is a sign for the future regarding the Majin Duu brothers. I feel that this episode was a real turning point in the story at large, so we've got to touch upon the Majins first and foremost, because the Namekian lore is all very well and good, and Havarok and I, we will have a more in-depth discussion coming in the next couple of days to really get into the details as to what we think is going to be happening with Neva, because this revelation about him joining the crew is a little weird, and I do find it a little bit surreal that Piccolo doesn't know how to speak Namekian, even though Kami's inside of his head and they had that whole conversation just in their minds in the Namekian tongue, and that's just really bizarre how suddenly Piccolo's like, actually, I don't know how to speak my own tongue, even though Kami does. Because let's be real, they need Neva to progress the story. It's just really odd that Piccolo can't speak Namekian. But anyway, Majins. Sorry, I got a bit distracted there. Now, Majin Duu. This is a very interesting plot point, because on the surface, you think, oh great, they failed to make another Majin, and now they've used the last Cyberman seed. But the difference here is that just burrowing down that little bit more from about 6 centimeters odds down to 20, so about 8 inches, you get yourself a Majin who's a lot more authentic to the original Majin Buu archetype. So that's the whole point of Majin Buu at the time. Pure chaos, unpredictability, you're not quite sure how it's going to evolve, and whether or not it can actually learn on the fly, which is exactly what Majin Duu does. It has the absolutely prodigious learning curve of Kid Buu, but also the simplistic, quite wholesome mentality of Majin Buu, as in Fat Buu, because it is motivated by candy, and it gets it, and it can also learn while it's battling a Tamagami. Now, whether or not it'll actually beat the Tamagami remains to be seen, because as we found out from Neva, is that you can only fight one-on-one, so people speculating about Goku and Vegeta fighting a Tamagami together, well, that's not going to happen anymore. They probably bicker amongst themselves as to who's going to fight Tamagami number 1, should Majin Duu not beat Tamagami number 1. But I think that that might happen, because one thing we have to see is that even though Majin Duu is big, chubby, all the stuff that we saw with the original Fat Buu, the fact is, though, is that this is the kind of Majin that we expected. And I really did like the Dr. Slump reference of the cha. So it just shows the simplistic attitude is something that I think Dr. Arinsu was not really expecting, but really should have. And Marba is probably a little bit unnerved by the fact that she wants pure chaos. I remember what pure chaos was like, and I don't like it. But then again, we've seen before that Marba does play dumb and pretends to not know things, but I think she knows exactly what was the case when Bibidi asked for Majin Buu to be created in the first place. And even though Majin Duu is not exactly verbose, this is very much what a Majin is to be expected. So I wouldn't be surprised, based on how Majin Kuu fanboys his younger brother, even though the dynamic is actually the other way around, that Majin Kuu acts like the younger brother even though he was created first. I feel like at one point, there will be a moment when Majin Kuu sacrifices himself to try and save his brother, or maybe they absorb together to make Majin Duu or something like that. That they combine their powers to create a formidable force that might be the big bad. Because we don't know for sure whether Majin Duu has the full gamut of powers that Majin Buu has, including absorption. Because now we do know that he does have jelly-like features. He can just duck in his head, which is exactly what Buu could do back in Dragon Ball Z. Now that is very interesting. We will find out more about what this Majin can do and its capabilities, but I can assure you that what Daima was able to do in this episode, I think could
really tick the boxes of all kinds of fans of Dragon Ball. It had the really cool fight with Vegeta and Tamagami number 2. It had the slightly comedic fight of Majin Duu and Tamagami number 1. It also had a little bit of storytelling with the Namekians, Vegeta, and then he gets eaten by the Kraken. And yeah, of course, that many people might be thinking, oh great, Toriyama from Beyond the Grave is doing Vegeta dirty. The battle is not over, folks. I feel like there is going to be more to this, that Vegeta just won't simply be saved and then basically he's just going to go, well, I'm not going to fight the Tamagami anymore, and all that stuff. So we'll get to that in a moment, but I just still am really fascinated by the margins. Because even though Dr. Arinsu is completely frustrated with the fact that she's now created, in her mind, 2 duds, she doesn't really understand the point of Majin Buu. All she can recall and all that she has seen is the strength. She's expecting power, strength, and servitude, which is exactly what she's not getting in her own mind. The whole point, and I think this is what Maba's been trying to say, is that Majin Buu cannot really be controlled and also be incredibly strong. You can't have it both ways. She wants a completely subservient one, you get Majin Kuu. You want something a little bit stronger, you get Majin Duu, who is more led by their own personal wants and needs. And you also see that bond between them, that Majin Kuu and Duu. I was a little bit concerned that Majin Duu would be completely soulless and completely disregard or even kill Majin Kuu, but I'm glad that that didn't happen. And that simply by giving him chocolate, they're friends for life, and that they are looking out for one another, because even though Duu is quite simplistic, he does also have some kind of moral compass, that even though he is chaotic, he's still not necessarily pure evil or something like that. And I like the fact that even though the Tamagamis, they are built mainly for combat, they do have personalities, they can get flustered, they also have some sort of honor, because in Tamagami number 2, he spots that Neva is there, and then spots that Vegeta's there to challenge him, and he's like, oh, you're actually serious? I see my creator over there. Hello. And then Tamagami number 1 starts to get a little bit antsy about the fact that Majin Duu is just doing all these weird things, and we are going to be starting to see this in the next episode, because we see the same thing that happened with Tamagami number 3. The eyes light up, they go all out, and even though we might not see Majin Duu destroying Tamagami number 1, we certainly might get to the point where number 1 just relents and says, okay, you win. But I'm getting a feeling that in what we got with Tamagami number 3, there was a game to be had, the final test to prove whether or not you were worthy of the Dragon Ball. Because, as Neva said, the reason why the Tamagamis exist is to prevent bad actors from getting the Dragon Balls to play off nefarious deeds. So Goku proved that he is of a good nature and quite wily and cunning and shrewd at the same time, because the whole thing with the cups, Dragon Ball thrown in the corner, Goku spots it instantly. He is that perceptive. Whereas I'm getting the feeling that even though Majin Duu might technically beat the first Tamagami in a contest of strength, when it comes to the final test, he might lose. And Arinsu might realize that, oh, okay, I didn't expect this. I need somebody that is strong and loyal and smart. And I don't think Duu is smart. He's a complete savant in terms of fighting, because like the Boos, learning on the job, which is very, very important and critical, because Duu will continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think the same will happen to Kuu as well. But I get the feeling that if Kuu was strong enough, he might have been able to be perceptive enough to be able to pass the test. I don't know. But I'm getting the feeling that Arinsu will be thwarted again, but this time not realizing that, oh, there's a written test or some kind of test of intelligence at the end to prove that, yeah, okay, you're just a walking, talking behemoth of a man or a thing. But when it comes to the smarts and the wit, nah, Duu ain't it. But I feel like, okay, we're now getting somewhere. And we're now getting to a stage where Dragonball Daima is really starting to come into its own. It's not like Dragon Ball GT, where it just suddenly pivots instantly into being pure action. We're still getting some storytelling. We are still getting the original premise laid out to us. The reason why we're not getting so much laws and legends and in-depth time with the second demon world is because, simply put, as we've seen, there's nothing there anymore other than just a senile old Namekian and a water beast. That's pretty much it. We're probably not going to be spending that much time there because there's nothing to really get stuck into other than oh, back in the day we were great. And then Shin going, oh, back in the day we used to be great. Basically, the second demon was like the British Empire. But you got to admit that the aesthetics are really, really cool of the second demon world. I'm glad that we are here. Just goes to show that the demon world, like we touched upon in various times in the last episode, this was probably the template for Universe Zero, and it's a nice one. I can understand why the Glins and the Namekians wanted to try and emulate it in different worlds, and why the Glins really took to the sacred world of the Kais, because it was not that much different to what they had in the second demon world, other than the sky was pink instead of green, but oh well. But I'm really, really intrigued by what we are seeing here and what we could expect. But okay, well, I'm really surprised about what Neva's doing here, and I'll think about it a little more as we get into our in-depth discussion. But it's interesting that he's now decided to tag along, and it's now making me start to think, well, okay, what is his real agenda here? Is he just wanting to relate to Piccolo, the descendant of Katats? And I did get that wrong in my previous review. I thought it was King Piccolo who was actually there, but I got it wrong. No, King Piccolo was the offshoot of the name as Namekian, and then Katas and all that stuff. So I got it a little bit mixed up. My bad. I'm recording these at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, so I'm a little bit hazy in that regard. I'm basically just trying to get this out as much as possible, and I was focusing on some other things, on all the other lore drops about Rhymus, etc. But the point is, though, is that I just feel like this is the only flaw I've got with this story at the moment, that I'm like, oh, do we really need Neva to tag along, other than the fact that he can speak Namekian? But Piccolo can speak Namekian. We know he can from historical events. Did Toriyama forget or something? I mean, we do know that Toriyama does forget things, and that scene between Piccolo and Kami in the 23rd World Tournament, it was a blink and you'll miss it sort of thing. But it should be something that is quite intrinsic, and Kami's in there. I can understand why Piccolo himself might not understand it or have forgotten it over the course of decades or something like that, because when was the last time he needed to speak Namekian? Was quite a long time ago, because I don't recall him really speaking it on Planet Namek in the Namek Saga. I don't recall it. It probably did, but I can't remember it at this time. Whereas with Kami, come on. He's a Dragon Clan member, intelligence, and all about historical events and origins, and now being fused back with Piccolo, surely that would have been enhanced all of those memories. It just feels really surreal and a little bit too convenient. That was the only flaw in this episode, because even though it was relatively light in terms of action in the first half, the second half really picked up, and this is probably one of the episodes that I noticed sped through the most. Like, I recall, just getting to the moment where, okay, we're into this scene. Oh, we're already 13 minutes in. Glorio didn't say anything. Pansy was only there to really explain things to Bulma, so that was there. So they were a conduit. Even though some of the other characters didn't really get to do much. I mean, Goku didn't really get to do much, and Vegeta managed to force his hand in there. Although, yeah, I think there's a bit of a continuity issue, actually. Hybis does not have the red collar anymore, and I recall Hybis having the collar in the previous episode, which meant that the gendarmerie and therefore Goma can track them, but he doesn't have it anymore. I don't recall Hybis taking it off, because in the previous episode, or at least 2 episodes ago, it was there, and I don't recall a moment when Hybis goes, oh yeah, I should probably get rid of this. Maybe Shin had it removed off screen or something like that, but I don't recall that happening. That's a little bit of another flaw as well. There are only 2. They're just slightly nitpicking. We probably will find out more about Neva's backstory and origin, and find out maybe he isn't the big bad anymore, that he's just a guy, he's just there, he's the only Namekian left, so he's kind of like, yeah, just kind of go along with things, and oh, that Goma, oh, okay. Oh, actually, I could have just pretended to be senile and old and decrepit to make sure that he didn't make any bad wish or something. So, even though he's not an evil person, you feel like Neva does have his own agenda, and he is in full control. That even though Goma, come on, he's not the big bad. He's wanting to be the big bad, and Degesu thinks that he's the big bad, but he ain't the big bad, because for starters, he ain't big. And Neva is in full control, because he just looked at the wish that Goma wanted to make, and it's just like, yeah, okay, all right, sure, why not? I am quite impressed, though, that you were stronger than I gave you credit for. And he knew exactly what was going to happen, and that he wouldn't have allowed Dende to have been killed, because, as he said, Namekians in the demon world are valuable, because, well, he's the only one. Dende's now there, Piccolo's now there, so the amount of Namekians in the demon world has tripled, effectively. So they are going to be immensely valuable and useful to whoever's going to be running the demon world. And in the case of Arinsu, that is her objective. She wants loyal subjects. And Majin Duu is hopefully, in her mind, the one that's going to be able to do it. But I feel like really, she is simply power hungry. And that is a major flaw because up until now, she's looked really shrewd and intelligent. I mean, she is the head of science. She is the lead scientician of the demon world. But now she is getting mad with power and power hungry and corrupt. Maba is promising all this and so far it's not delivering, at least in Arinsu's mind. But they think they failed with Majin Duu. No, they didn't. That's exactly what Majin Buu was like at the beginning. Driven by food, completely chaotic and unpredictable, and that is what we're seeing with the Tamagami. Constantly flummoxed, as in, why is this guy getting up in my face with his butt or something? And why is he just acting like so stupid, yet so powerful? And yet over the course of the fight, it's going to change. But I am pretty sure, I'm going to predict this, that in the next episode, they will still fail to get the Dragon Ball because Duu will fail the test in terms of intelligence or wit or cunning or deceit. We can't have, at this point, Arinsu having the first Demon World Dragon Ball. It's going to get to that point that maybe I think that they will lie in wait and then Kuu will find some way to be able to trick everyone and then maybe try and steal that ball from one of them just to make sure that they can't do the wish just yet. And then they can then formulate a plan to then steal the other 2 Dragon Balls. Or maybe there might be a situation where, Neva finds a way to be able to just not allow the Dragon Balls to be activated. Or, of course, the Namekian password. Because Arinsu will discover the same thing. As in, okay, I have these Dragon Balls, what do I do with them? And then Neva's like, yes, I don't know. I don't know. And he'll pretend to be dumb, but he's already judged the characters of the Dragon Crew and, Glorio, Pansy, etc. But then again, at the same time, Glorio is there. It's up to him whether or not he chooses to relay this information to Arinsu eventually, saying, oh yes, by the way, you need to speak Namekian in order to use the password. So either they will force Neva to do it, or they will go to Dende. But then Goma made Dende a kid, a baby, who could not talk. Neva is holding the cards here, and that is going to be something intriguing to watch, because he can dictate where the story goes. And even though his moral compass is somewhat ambiguous, what has been revealed to us is that he is not a bad actor because he brought the Tamagamis into existence because of that fact. So we are now finding out more whilst also getting some really cool action at the same time. Now that is really good because people... Oh yeah, blood. Now, I knew this would happen. I just saw the prevailing wind online, social media. As soon as Vegeta cut his cheek, blood dripped. Everyone's now going, oh my goodness, Dragon Ball is so back. And I'm just like, whoa, calm down. Okay, that's cool. That it's there, that it exists. It's not squeaky clean. But I recall a moment in the Universe 6 arc that we got something vaguely similar, like a red scratch or something like that. So don't count your horses there. And we're not going to be getting back to Dragon Ball Prime Time, where you're getting people holding their hands, blood dripping like crazy or something like that. But it's something. It just goes to show that it's not going to be absolutely PG or universal. It's not going to be like Sunday morning cartoons anymore, this. Daima isn't that. Daima is being shown at night on Japanese television, and it's being streamed to the world. I can already tell there's a lot more interest in Daima, and people are now starting to like it because it's now resembling what people expected. And oh yeah, by the way, the manga is coming back in February, according to sources, Geekdom, Jump Festa, etc. It's got like a story with Clean God, Goten Trunks as a team. It might be the beginning and a transition back into another story, a final arc maybe of Toriyama before his passing, or maybe it might be completely new from Toyotaro. So maybe in 2025 we might get some things back. We might see Dragon Ball now actually getting into its proper 40th anniversary stride. So that's something to really look forward to. But for now, Dragon Ball Daima episode 11 really appeased me. It was good entertainment. It had some good lore. And I'm really happy with what Majin Duu is doing. And now that Majin Kuu clearly isn't the main final baddie and that he might be involved in some shape or form, I think people now are actually starting to like him because, yeah, no, he's not the major threat. He's now the comedy relief, as it were. And now Majin Duu, they'll have that bond, that connection. And now you get the feeling that if Majin Kuu is killed or if Arinsu does something or maybe upsets him, that Duu will go berserk and then maybe start to actually attack their own creator. And then Mabu are going, I knew it! It's going to get out of control! And I told you it would go out of control! And then Arinsu was like, no, you didn't. I didn't expect this. And it's like, yeah, even though she's a scientician, she is still a little bit, naive, as it were, even though she thinks that she's the bee's knees. But anyway, if you're just joining us with these Daima reviews, first of all, welcome and about time. But you can check out our reviews right from the beginning. If you don't want to go through the main episodes, if they get a little bit slow for you, you can just watch my summations here